Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Heart to Heart Talk with Dr. Srini Gangasani. Let me first tell you about a little bit about him. Dr. Srini is originally from Hyderabad, India, and he graduated from Kurnool Medical College of University of Health Sciences with multiple gold medals. He has done his residency and cardiology fellowship from William Beaumont Hospital, Oakland University, and started his private practice in Atlanta, Georgia. He is board certified in cardiovascular medicine, echocardiography, nuclear cardiology, heart failure, and transplantation. Dr. Srini held multiple positions in organizations, including the Georgia Association of Physicians of Indian Origin, also the American Association of Physicians of Indian Origin, and the Association of Telugu Medical Graduates, USA. He served as a chairperson of American Indian Physicians Association API Convention 2019 and 2021. He's also chair of API Global Health Summit held in Hyderabad 2019-20. And recently, the governor of Georgia has appointed Dr. Gangasani to Georgia Composite Medical Board, which oversees physicians practicing in Georgia. He's the only third Indian American to be over 100-year board. Welcome, Dr. Srini.
Thank you, Arya. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Thank you.
So today we are going to have a heart-to-heart talk with the people we have watching the FB Live with us. So we have got a few questions related to heart health and how to take care of heart. So let's first start about talking with eGlobal Doctors. So if you could explain a little bit about what exactly eGlobal Doctors is all about.
Actually, hi everyone. Good morning in United States and good evening in India and other parts of the world. So eGlobal Doctors is a unique telehealth platform built by doctors in association with tech people from West Coast of United States to help connect patients anywhere in the world with doctors anywhere in the world. So the three important things with the eGlobal Doctors is one is connecting the patients and the doctors anywhere in the world. Number two is connecting patients with the doctors at the same time, involving the patient's family in the consultation. So in this world where COVID is not making you move freely, with the eGlobal Doctors, you can be in Australia, New Zealand, or United States, or India. Patient can be at one place and the doctors can be in anywhere else. And then the family can join so that you can do the consultation at the same time. The patient's family is in the Zoom meeting with like what we're doing right now. The third one is sometimes it's not easy to identify what the problem is, and then you may need multiple doctors to take care of the problem. I'll just give a simple example. Recently I had some back issues and the neck pain. Initially, I didn't know, as a cardiologist, I've been in the medicine for now for almost 35 years. So I didn't know who to go to, orthopedic doctor, a neurosurgeon, or to go to a rheumatologist, or to go internal medicine doctor. So in fact, I talked to all my friends, hey, where should I go to? So who should I be my first person to go to? I had a consultation with all the doctors, and then I got my back pain and neck pain significantly improved in collaboration with literally, I got a neurosurgery consultation, orthopedic consultation, a physical therapy consultation, and a rheumatology consultation, just to make sure that what it is the right kind of a doctor need to go to. And sometimes it's not possible to have a one person to take care of the problem. So in the eGlobal Doctor setting, we can have all four physicians at the same time. I'll be talking as a patient, and then four other doctors will be on the platform at the same time. So that is actually the beauty. Because I'm a physician, I could go talk to all these people really easy, but it's not easy for a lot of other people to have so many consultations all at one time. That is the beauty of the eGlobal Doctors, is we can have all the consultants at one place to take care of the problem, with consultations between the doctors along with the patient involvement. I think those are the three major kind of unique features of eGlobal Doctors.
Great. That was a great summary. So if we have also heard about a lot about the COVID-19 support that eGlobal Doctors has provided to many people. So if you could elaborate a little bit about that as well.
I think when the COVID-19 came, almost 2 years now. So initially it was local here and there. When the second wave came in India, I think the doctors and the hospitals were overwhelmed with so many people coming in, because our medical system is not meant to take care of so many people at the same time. Same thing happened in New York, same thing happened in all parts of the United States and all parts of the world. So as a person of Indian origin and graduated from medical school in India, and then all of us at eGlobal Doctors are for Indian origin. So we wanted to do something, give it back to the community and help our brethren doctors and then the hospital system in India, which is overwhelmed. So we decided, along with the American Association of Physicians of Indian Origin, API, and the SEWA doctors, who we came together with the global kind of helping the counseling with the patients who are very scared, literally could not go out and could not talk to any of the doctors easily. So from all these doctors, actually, I'm really grateful for so much overwhelming help given by the doctors who work all day in the United States and in United Kingdom and came back at the end of the day from 8 o'clock in the night from East Coast time until 1 o'clock time, East Coast time. And it was unbelievable. I think I was like really impressed the way so many people wanted to come together. And this was the counseling. We are not treating anybody. We just want to give them the reassurance and the guidance where to go, when to go to the hospital. And it was really a gratifying experience for me. All the team members, I think especially SEWA International, which has done a wonderful job during the COVID times, but the SEWA doctors team was part of this collaboration with API and the eGlobal doctors to help this. And as a second kind of a situation where people were giving a lot of donations, like a CPAP machines, ventilators. So eGlobal is trying to help collaborate and help these machines are working in a good kind of environment. And if there is a problem, eGlobal is working with the Intuit Foundation and a Stryker to put together a team of engineers who can help these hospitals to take care of this donated kind of machinery, which will be useful in the case of at the time COVID, but also in the future too.
Wow, that is really great. And we have heard that you as eGlobal Doctors consulted more than 2,500 patients in that period also.
It was very gratifying. I think some days we saw like 40 to 50 patients, and there were doctors who were busy, and it's like in a private setting, like in a Zoom setting. So each doctor would virtually go into the room. And we as a cardiologist, I didn't know as much about COVID compared to like a lot of critical care doctors. So some of our critical care doctors came by and just kind of taught us how to take care of these people, how to counsel these people. So it was really a great session. We had really good time sitting in the doctor's lounge, talking to each other, helping each other. And sometimes 2 or 3 doctors go into the one room so that we can learn from each other. So I think it was a great experience.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. And also now we are hearing on all the social media platforms, similar to the COVID-19 help that you provided, eGlobal Doctors has started a free counseling service. So if you could tell us something more about it.
So after the COVID, I think pandemic kind of slowed down a little bit. So we kept the evening sessions for a while, and then as the people gotten better and better, so the pandemic got a little less and less. So we're not getting that many people. So we closed down that part of the eGlobal kind of a, program, and then we decided that like I said, I think people don't know which doctor to go to, what a counseling point of view. So we thought we would help the people just to come by and talk to the doctor and get the opinion about, hey, which doctor to go to or what do I need to do. So in collaboration with some of the Indian associations like Atana, so we decided, and the ATA, so we decided to work with them so that we can have anybody come to the counseling session, talk to the doctors, family medicine, internal medicine, orthopedics, cardiology. And it's not a treatment. It's just a counseling so that we can guide them to go where to go to, and then give our opinions, like, these are the people you need to talk to. And then eGlobal Doctors, because we have such a good pool of quality doctors, we can also guide them in the city where they are, which place they can go to, so that we can just help the people in the process of, when you're sick, you don't know where to go to. I think that is the kind of a counseling, is the kind of a session where you're helping them, just basically guiding them through. And it happens every Sunday between 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So I think anybody anywhere in the world can go to the eGlobal Doctors and can join the session to get just a counseling from any of the doctors.
Great, sure. Everyone should definitely take the advantage and benefit of this free counseling that is provided by the Global Doctors. And like you are the board certified expert cardiologist associated with the Global Doctors. So how long have you been practicing as a cardiologist in medicine field?
I started my medical school in 1985. I don't want to tell my age, but I think so. It took 15 years by the time I became a cardiologist to practice in United States. So after finishing my residency, I started the practice in Atlanta, Georgia in 2000. So I've been practicing for about 21 years now in Atlanta, Georgia.
Wow, that is great. Coming to the heart health questions that we have got recently from you guys who are watching the FB Live. So I would like to ask you exactly what is the cardiac arrest and what causes it, like the sudden death?
So before we go to the cardiac arrest, let me just think about the sudden death. Okay, sudden death is a sudden unexpected death of the person. So it could be cardiac, it could be non-cardiac. So there are not. Let me talk about the non-cardiac causes first, and then I'll explain the cardiac or sudden cardiac arrest or sudden cardiac death. So when the sudden death happens because of the non-cardiac causes, like somebody may have a brain aneurysm, it suddenly ruptures and patient dies, or somebody may have a blood clot into the lungs and people may die because of the what we call a pulmonary embolism. So there are other aneurysm rupture in the abdomen can cause the sudden death of the person. So there are some sudden death reasons from a non-cardiac causes, but majority of the time, sudden death is due to a cardiac arrest or a sudden cardiac death, which is a sudden, unexpected death of an individual due to a malfunction of the heart. Most of the time, it's because of an arrhythmia called ventricular fibrillation, which is an erratic rhythm, which heart, instead of contracting normally, like each time, each beat, it goes into like a fibrillatory kind of a thing. So brain does not get enough blood flow, and brain starts to die within 5 minutes, and then after 15 to 20 minutes, so it becomes it will become a damage so much that you cannot repair it. So after 20 minutes, the chance of recovery of the brain goes down significantly. So I think the sudden cardiac death because of the malfunctioning of the heart can be because of fibrillation or arrest, but more than 80% of the time, it's because of the blockage in the heart. Either it's causing the acute heart attack, like a lot of people suddenly die having a chest pain and because of the blood clot, or it could be an old heart attack, cause the damage to the heart muscle, which causes the scar tissue. The scar tissue can induce these arrhythmia or ventricular fibrillation, or what we call asystole, where the heart just stops. So those are the sudden cardiac death reasons from blockages. About 15 to 20% of the time, it could be not related to the blockage at all. There are other reasons, like people are born with congenital anomalies, or some of them called cardiomyopathies, called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which is a thick heart muscle in the heart, which can induce heart to go into this ventricular fibrillation without even having a diagnosis before. And some of these occur in young athletes when they are playing or jogging or running. Or sometimes people are born with what we call a long QT syndrome, where our electrical system is a little bit deformed congenitally, which make them more prone for having a sudden cardiac arrest or sudden cardiac death. And some people, it's impossible to identify because there is a thing called idiopathic ventricular fibrillation, where our heart goes into this erratic rhythm without any cause. So we still don't know all the causes, but majority of the time is the heart disease or a blockage causing it. So which is kind of a preventable or correctable kind of a cause. I think we need to concentrate on those kind of causes which are correctable, which is about 80% of the time. Those are the correctable causes of the heart, which is a blockages in the heart or a previous heart attack causing this sudden cardiac death.
Right. And so are there any warning signs, like before even you diagnose, like you can understand that you are having a heart disease?
So heart disease can be silent. Heart disease can have the symptoms. So silent heart attack happens more in people with a diabetes or prolonged disease of hypertension. So that sometimes can cause a nerve damage, and people, even though they're having the symptoms of the blockage, they won't feel it because of the nerve damage. But majority of the time, people, if they're having a heart attack, it could be a heart tightness, pressure. Most typical symptom is a heaviness or pressure in the middle of the chest. Occurs when you're doing something or active. So if once the heart blockage becomes 80%, 90% in that range, people start to develop the symptoms. When it gets to 100%, that is a heart attack. So people have this misconception of a heart disease or heart attack happens only when the blockage is 80 or 90%. Majority of the time, people can have a 20, 30, 40% plaque, which can rupture and form a plaque, makes it 100% within 5 minutes. So that's when people start to get this tightness, pressure associated with the nausea, vomiting, sweating. If you get any of those kind of symptoms happening more than 10 to 15 minutes, I think they should take the help of a physician, so that you want to make sure that it's not a heart attack. When it becomes a cardiac arrest, the heart becomes erratic, and within few seconds, you feel dizzy, lightheaded, and people faint. So going from a heart attack to the cardiac arrest, not everybody with a heart attack goes into cardiac arrest, but there are about 10 to 15% of the people can go into this bad kind of arrhythmia or malignant arrhythmia called fibrillation. So calling the 911 and getting the help sooner, because treatment point of view, doing the CPR is the key to preserve the damage not to happen to the brain. So while you're waiting for the 911, when the 911 people come in, if it's a ventricular fibrillation, easy rhythm to come back to normal. They give a shock, people come back to normal within like seconds. Like within, you give a shock, you come back to normal. So its key is do the CPR to save the brain, and at the same time call 911 so that you can get the help, so that the defibrillator can get the patient back to normal while we are waiting to take care of the problem, which is a underlying blockage, which we can take care of. You can go to the cath lab, you can open up with a balloon and a stent. It's easy. But if it takes more than 20 minutes, the brain may be irrecoverably damaged, then we may not be able to, you may be able to get the heart back, but the brain damage may be permanent. So that's the reason why every one of us, I think we should, if we can learn to do the CPR, the chest compressions, as much as even the little BLS course, which is available in majority of the universities, majority of the hospitals, learning the CPR to save our loved ones or anybody or bystanders. So I think it's important in that kind of a setup, do the CPR followed by this defibrillator. Right now, there are a lot of automatic defibrillators outside available in major of the malls and stuff. You can put the defibrillator on the chest. It automatically identifies the rhythm and saves the life.
So then, is there any specific age from which you need to take care of your heart so that you avoid the main problems that we would face at an older age?
Let me share my screen for just one slide. I think this will give a little bit of an idea about you see the slide?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is this is how the blockages form. If you can see the first part of it, this is our normal artery. You want the artery to be like this in the first part. So around even 15 to 20 years of age, people start to get these fatty streaks, which is a little bit of a thickening because of a plaque formation within the heart. So early, and then 20 onwards, and people start to get more and more plaque formation. As you go towards the right on my screen, so you can see the plaque getting more and more into the wall of the heart. And then suddenly, sometimes the plaque ruptures here, and the plaque ruptures, that forms the blood clot, and that becomes 100%, like here, which is called a myocardial infarction or the heart attack. So the plaque rupture forms a thrombus and causes the heart attack. So this is the way I was telling you about. So you may have a plaque only 15, 20% here, which people don't get any symptoms at the time. But suddenly when the plaque ruptures and slowly the plaque forms and forms the blood clot, this makes it 100% within a few minutes. It doesn't take that long to go from here, which patient was walking around doing everything without any symptoms, and then going from here to here's 100% block, people get the symptoms, chest pain, and having a cardiac arrest within 5 to 10 minutes. So that is the key, is to not to have even these kind of a plaque anywhere. So you want artery to be like this in the first picture where the normal, but the plaque starts to form. But there is a 50% of it is, I think, is some genetic predisposition. Not everybody starts to form the plaque at that age. But I think if you have a genetic predisposition, or if your cholesterol is high, or if your diabetes, so if your blood pressure is going high, or if you're a smoker, not exercising, those are all the risk factors for people to develop these fatty streaks early on and some of this becomes calcified, and then that we can identify through the calcium scores, where here, even though plaque is only like 20%, but still there is some calcified plaque, so we can identify early on so that we can prevent this plaque to get worse by the risk factor modification and by treating with the medications if the cholesterol is high or if the diabetes. And this, I'm going to just show one more thing. So if you look at the last one, here is the plaque, which is gradually increasing. So that is the plaque where you get the chest pains when it becomes to 80 to 90%. So that we can identify, we can press stent in if you're having the symptoms. So these two are two different kind of problems. One is an obstructive plaque, but it's happening slowly over the time. People can develop the plaque causing the tightness, pressure, heaviness in the chest, and then you slow down, it goes away. You take rest, it goes away. You take nitroglycerin, it goes away. This is not an emergency. We can treat it, like, come to the office and we do a stress test. We find out that heart is not getting enough blood flow because there is a 80 or 90% plaque. And this we can take care of it with a stent or a bypass surgery if all the arteries are blocked. But this is an emergency. When the plaque ruptures, within 5 minutes, the plaque becomes a thrombus. Thrombus is a blood clot. That makes it 100%. This, you don't need to have a 70 or 80% plaque to cause this thrombus. That is the misconception a lot of people have. So when somebody goes in, get a stress test done, we can only identify the plaque, which is here, 80 to 90%. But we cannot identify the plaque 20, 30% by the stress test because that's not causing the problem. But that still can cause the plaque rupture, that still can cause a heart attack. Stress test does not prevent the heart attacks. I have seen the cases where we did the angiograms. Angiogram showed only 20% plaque. Within 1 month, patient had 100% blockage because the plaque ruptured and it caused the blood clot became 100%, having a heart attack. So even though stress test is normal, what that means is at the time, there is an 85% chance that there is no a plaque of 70 or 80%, you can identify it. So that is more for angina or a plaque-related chest pain, but not because of it's not going to prevent the heart attack. That's what I want. If one thing you want to take it home today, please identify the plaque. If there is a plaque with the calcium scores or if you have a lot of risk factors, get some testing done. But the stress test does not prevent the heart attacks. If you get chest pain or tightness, pressure associated with sweating, nausea, please do go to the doctor and take care of it so that you want to make sure that there's no blockage causing it. I'm going to show one more thing, one more slide. See how significant the deaths from the cardiovascular disease from the worldwide. So if you look at in 1990, so it was Western countries were about 5 million versus the non-Western developing countries were 9 million. So if you come to 2020, so the 9 became 19, 5 became 6. So if you can see that developing countries are catching up with the modernization or westernization, with all the diet changing, and then we're not active like what you used to be. So the exponential increase in developing countries with the heart attacks and occurring at a lot younger age. This is the high prevalence. You're talking about the age. So if you look at when they looked at the IVUS, which is the intravascular ultrasound measurements of the thickness of where the plaque is, you look at 13 to 19, 17% of the people already had a plaque developing, 13 to 19. So there's no young age. You need to take care of it as soon as possible. As you go higher, and you can see the plaque. When you get to 50, 85% of the people have some plaque. It does not mean that everybody's going to get a heart attack. It does not mean that everybody is going to get an angina. But that plaque starts to form early. You need to take care of it as soon as possible. So I think you need to start teaching them at schools that, need to take care of the good diet and exercise, those kind of habits, so that we don't need to get to these problems in the later part of our lives.
Yes, very correct. So, and thank you for showing the slides. The visual impact is definitely informing about the importance and care we should be taking. So guys, stay tuned with us for some more questions about heart health. We'll be back soon after a short break.